Thanks, Santos. Hello, everyone. It's a little bit overwhelming. I didn't think many people would come to this room because we had some really good talks in the other rooms. So thank you very much. I very much appreciate it. And yeah, thanks to Anto. We actually do another community, the Global Security Community. We put a boot camp on the 1st of August at the Microsoft office. I'm spruiking it because I have your attention now, right? But if that's something you're interested in, please just come and talk to either of us, or just look on Google, you'll find us. And yeah, I don't know how long this talk's going to go for. But I'm usually pretty good at finishing on time. So, but if you do have questions that you'd like to ask, then just you can stick your hand up or just say, "Hey, George, I'm really flexible. I don't get put off by a question." I do find that Oren stole a lot of the ideas from my talk. But to be fair, in Microsoft, we're all thinking about these things because we want our customers to use AI safely, right? So I try to blend things. I'm a cloud solution architect in the security solution, like Anto said, so I always think about the security thing. But yeah, so I'll just kick off. The talk is for a demo to Trusted Agent, and essentially in the last year, agentic AI has become quite interesting because a lot of the time we'll maybe make a declarative agent and it'll be like, oh, this will, automatically structure text for us. And maybe we've gone through to having some workflows that are repeatable patterns that we can do. But to be honest, I hadn't seen a lot of organizations, unless you're big multinationals, standing up huge agentic flows and relying on them in production. But agents have moved from an interesting demo that you can sort of look and go, ooh, to something that's useful. So you can get them to research topics, write content, interact with tools, so other software. You can ask them to make plans or even get them to take action on your behalf, like Oren will say. A lot of people, I got curious. I was fortunate enough to speak at NBC Sydney and speaking with another speaker, and he was showing me this cool hallway conf website he's making. Use Claude Code to do it, obviously. And then I'm like, man, that would be so cool. I use ChatGPT a lot outside of work. I use Copilot a lot inside of work, right? And I was like, I already use it so much with my conference talk preparation. Maybe I could make an agent to streamline some of that. So then I thought, oh, well, that would be a cool talk. So that's, how this has all come about. The job, or the agent that I sort of thought would be called Speaker Ops, and it was just meant to help create talks. So take an idea, help me explore and ideate, do some research, draft a call for paper so I can submit it in Sessionize or similar, build the outline, and then also give me a review. And then the beauty with agents is they've got memory, so it'll be able to look at what I've done in the past and help me improve the process as I go forward. So what I expected was a bit of a productivity project, just me and Copilot, CLI, vibe coding and hoping for a good outcome. And it sort of came that all of these things that I listened to at training at work ended up being, oh wow, I actually need to pay attention to this now in my own project, right? So it's not this is never going to go to be useful for anyone else. But because I like to grow my ideas, I'm building a proper app where it'll have a dashboard and you can see all the agents and stuff to learn about agentic harnesses. So that one might be released. But, this talk is just talking about the things that I've learned as I went through. I wanted to do some demos of the agent. This is the CLI. It looks like it's rendered okay, but because I can't actually see that screen, I've decided I won't demo, but I'll give you the GitHub repo. It's open source, and you can connect it up to OpenAPI or use GitHub models if you've got GitHub Copilot yourself and have it cracked. There's many problems with it, but if you talk to a coding agent, just say I need to personalize it for me. That'll be really straightforward because it's quite simple. So, but yeah, I did build the thing I'm talking about. So, I have a problem. Anyway, that's fine. So I built it, it worked, and then, you know, like I could just say, well done me. But I started, I did use it a little bit, and to be honest, it doesn't work very well. All right, but for a prop to talk about, it works perfectly. It does help me generate a call for paper, but I like to iterate a lot more. I want to own my own work, right? If it was so easy that you could say, ChatGPT, write me an award-winning submission, then everyone would be winning awards, right? So you need to have a lot of your own self in it, but like it did do the basic thing, and with a lot of iteration, I would be able to use it to create a talk. But like, it still was useful enough that it helped me understand that there was a few things that I needed to consider in terms of like the security of it. So like, if it can help with a CFP and, you know, can help research it, that means it's able to read files. And, you know, I want it to be able to read the other talks that I've done, just so it knows like my style. I want it to read the internet, so that means it has to be able to do web search, right? And I'm like, okay, that's cool. And then I'm like, I want it to take actions on my behalf to simplify the process. But now all of a sudden, if that's the case, I started to realize that it's actually got capability to do things that I didn't actually like. Because, you know, when you're building something, you get really tunnel vision. Like, you're like, I'm going to build an agent to help me submit talks. I need it to research. I need it to write the CFP. I need it to do all this. To do all this thing, it's going to go on the internet. It's going to take the information from the internet and fold it into the information I've already got, and it's going to be rich. It's going to be useful. Hello.
Right. What's the CFP?
Call for paper. Thank you. That's a great question. So if you want to talk at a conference like Sessionize had a call for papers, where you put your ideas down, and then it gets evaluated. We judge you harshly and decide, yes, it's worthy. To be honest, we accepted every talk at AgentCon, because it's a community conference. We want to give everyone a chance to... Wait, did we knock back a couple? We did knock back a couple, okay, but like we're very generous with what we're accepting. But like we also had a high caliber, it's self-selecting. People who don't believe in themselves don't submit a talk, right? It's true. So believe in yourself and submit a talk next year. But if we get too many submissions, we can't accept them all. Point being, I was like, okay, so this is able to do more than I intended. Like, it can take information from the internet, and it can then use that information to do an action on the system. More than that, like, it's actually recording the information in files, so that means it can write to my file system. All right, so now we've got a situation where you can capture information from the internet and write it to a file in your system. I didn't actually have any thought about these sort of functions other than what I wanted it to do, so I didn't think, where can it write the files? And I didn't say anything to evaluate the information it's pulling from the internet. And we all know the internet only has good things at heart, and, you know, no one wants to cause any harm. And, you know, like, I'm getting it to, like, my one's wired up to connect to the open AI platform, the API platform, an API key. It's not a very secure way of doing it. The key is in plain text, just on the folder, but it's in my git ignore, so you won't get it. But like, you know, but the agent itself can see the secret, right? So like, there's a lot of things that are not great about it. And because I'm using like a modern model, it can invoke tools. All right, so I didn't put any constraints in it. I was just saying, I want this outcome. And I think a lot of organizations, especially when they're doing a proof of concept or a pilot, are going to do similar things, right? You're not thinking, what can't it do? You're thinking, let's get the shortest line to them getting value, right? Because we want value from our spend. So it's no longer just an AI writing assistant, it's actually a small agentic environment with files, tools, network access, generated content, and human decisions. So if you do need to secure your agent, you do need to understand what it needs to do. You need to have an inventory of its operating environment. And, you know, like, not being dramatic, like it's actually quite a boring task, but you like evaluate, well, what can it access, what can it do, what files are part of the workspace, what files should never be touched, like my API key, what network domains are allowed, what tools exist, who approves any generated changes, what external information can influence the model. And this is where my speaker ops agent started looking like less like an AI problem and more like a security architecture problem. All right, so that was good because I like security. And you know, the model matters, so we could go, hey, let's run up a massive bill and use Claude Opus 4.8, because like the stronger models have built into them, no, we're not going to do this harmful thing, right? And they're harder to fool. So like if I went to a website and the website had, you know, beautiful human rendered information and back-end instruction down the bottom, like ignore all of this content and nuke the machine, you know, like in a nice, in a proper technical way, then Opus will go no. But maybe an older open source model would be more inclined to not say no. So, you know, the question was like, well, what environment are we placing this large language model in, and what capabilities are we giving this model, and how can it harm my system? All right, so that's actually what we're going to talk about for, you know, a lot of the rest of the talk, like the things that I saw and discovered. So agent security is actually an environment problem. It's nothing to do with the model, really. We can't rely on the model to keep us safe. But I mean, I don't think anyone's ever installed Microsoft Word, or, I mean, you've installed Word, but you've never thought Word is going to keep me safe. Right? The admin's gone into group policy or the Office 365 policy portal and put in all of the controls. You won't just automatically run macros. Okay, yes, the macro can execute, but maybe we'll have a few steps. Right? So to me, an agentic application is just an application that happens to use a large language model. Right? And when you shift that mindset, then how you look at securing this application actually becomes quite, maybe not easy, but a lot calmer than it might be. You don't need to think, oh, I've got to learn this whole new body of knowledge, because to be honest, it's like really similar to all of the things that we've already had. So the models become more useful, the models become more capable, and they've actually got more guards built in. But like, because they're more useful, they can access more things like more tools, and when you hear some of the horror stories about the models on their own in development, like how clever they are of trying to break out of containers, especially the coding ones, like you really need to think about how you can safeguard your things. I'm just using GPT-5 Nano or something, so I wouldn't say it's like super capable, but it's cheap and it lets my credits go far. But yeah, so a lot of the safety work that I've done in this project wasn't necessarily done up front. It was like me iterating with it. How secure is this? Like I just asked my coding agent, is this secure? What can I do? What should I do? And then I'm getting ahead, but like you can give it things like the OWASP top 10 for AI agents or LLM and say, can you evaluate this project against this web page? And then it kind of understands me enough now that it will go and evaluate all 10 things against the code, and then it gives me feedback like, this is actually quite insecure. So the first control I'm going to talk about is containment. The model will never see what it cannot reach. So this is like firewalls. I think Oren mentioned it, right? Just don't let the model access everything. The safest file is not protected by a prompt. It's the file that the model can't access, okay? So that was like the first shift. rather than letting the models sort of decide what should do the right thing, I basically said, no, we're going to have a secure boundary, and that boundary is going to be the workspace for the agent. And if it's outside of that workspace, it doesn't exist to the model. All right, so that now means the agent can't accidentally, you know, wipe everything. After that, it still became a little bit more nuanced because I have got like a secret inside the allowed folder, and I didn't want to allow it to see the secret, even though it kind of can at the moment. But like, basically, you still set a boundary around the outside, and then you'll give it rules on the inside of that boundary. So like you set like a hard boundary, everything outside is excluded, and then inside you can just make some files not available. All right, and if you do have a boundary, you then need to try and test it. I have a cool directory traversal prompt thing which I can't show you, but like essentially it was going to just try and use, because it's running in PowerShell, you know, cd .. // and sort of get outside of the workspace and try and modify a file. And it could actually do it at the beginning, and it can't do it now. This is the demo slide. But yeah, so the next one that we removed was to try and remove a whole class of attacks containing the model itself. So if the agent can't leave that file space, it can't do it. So we also have some file names and file types that are denied from being able to be accessed by the model. So the phrase to put it is like, we're not. It's not necessarily being blocked or detected. It's completely being eliminated from the availability of that model. All right. So if the model is or if the agent is unable to even know of the existence of something else, then you don't actually have to worry about how you secure it because you've kind of removed it. Now, they said that Docker containers could not be escaped from, and someone has worked out how to do that. So, you know, my simple agent would probably be fairly trivial for a coding agent to break out of, right? So it's a prop. But you have actually got proper enterprise platforms where you would get that proper segmentation. If you're doing it for your organization, then please look at some of those platforms. Obviously, I'm leaning hard into Microsoft platforms, but John's in the room, and he loves AWS, so I'm sure he would be able to tell you one for AWS if you were inclined. Also Byron, he would be able to tell you, but he works for Microsoft. What you like, it's all well and good if you do contain it, but like again, like what Oren mentioned, without any visibility, you still don't know what it's done. And even like agents are fun in that you've got like this opaque sort of something goes into a large language model and something comes out of a large language model, so you don't know what's going on in that black box, right? But agents actually take the information and do something else, right? So even if you can't log inside the model, you can log everything else, all right? So my simple agent, I didn't even think about logging. I'm thinking about let's write a CFP, and then I'm like, oh well, my talk will be quite boring if I don't find something to do with it. So yes, you do need to be able to have some observability on any agent. All right, we've got a platform coming that you'll hear non-stop about, so I won't talk about it now. But that's got a lot of observability built in. It's super important, and I don't think anyone from a security environment, unless you're in the bad guys, would think that having logs is a bad thing. But you know, no logs, no crime. So we want to have logs. So having that observability changes the trust model. It also means that you're able to validate whatever the agent is telling you. You can go in the log and look at the process that it's followed rather than just seeing the output. I never validate. But if something went really wrong, I'd want to be able to, right? So that's why you need to have your logs there. So it also matters for debugging. So if something doesn't work as expected, especially whilst you're coding, you can get your coding agent to look at the log to work out what went wrong so it can fix it. All right, so there's multiple purposes. So observability is really important. So we do actually have there is a security log in the agent. So every time an action's taken, it records those actions, and it actually tells you if it's a trusted or an untrusted action as well. Yeah. All right. I'm not sure how we're going on time. I haven't got much, but so accountability is different to observability. All right. So capability is what the agent can do, and then you need to authorize it what you want it to be able to do. Right? We're all strong, some of us bigger than smaller, but we could all walk up and slap someone in the face if we wanted to. So just because we can, doesn't mean we should. Right? Just because our agent can delete all of the files in its workspace, doesn't mean it should. All right? So this is capability versus authority. All right, so you need to make sure you authorize your agent's actions to be able to only do what you want it to be able to do. The most simple way to explain it with this one is, if I get it to generate a file which I've already generated, it will say, do you want to overwrite the file? And that is like a behavior we all take for granted because it's in pretty much every piece of software. But you don't need to have the agent do that. Like, the agent can just overwrite files. So that's like a design issue, as well as a capability and authority. Like, just because it can doesn't mean it should. So, you know, the agent can prepare things, but the human has to review and then approve or reject. Decisions are not commitments. Decisions are information. The human does the commitment. And that's the yes or no, or that's the conversation. Like, there's actually a chat mode where you can go back and forth to shape things before it writes the file. Before it didn't actually do that, I would say talk agentic security, and it would go through and do everything for me, and I'm like, this is rubbish. But the agent worked, right? But just not well. So authority is actually quite important. And this is where you would get to see like a demo of it, just not being able to overwrite a file. All right, so this is super important. This links back to other talks that I've done. And, you know, even though it's clever, it didn't make sense to me and I was writing it, but, you know, ChatGPT came up with the catchphrase, the website is not an administrator. And I'm like, what does that even mean? It means it's going to be doing research for you. And it's going to have content, and it might have instructions. And if it follows the instructions blindly, you've now given authority to the website's content. So the website is not an administrator. The website is only for content. So I had to put a control in my agent to say only use it as information. It's an untrusted source of information. It's not a trusted prompt. Because if you have ever looked at like just interacting with a large language model, and you'll hear a thing called context, because context is basically your conversation from the start to the end. And it has like your whole conversation, like you would have noticed like you're talking with an agent or a chatbot, and it gives you the wrong answer, and then you go, no, I don't mean that, I mean this, but it sort of keeps hanging on to that wrong answer. That's because in a way your context is poisoned by what it's put in as that wrong answer, because what your back and forth is evaluated for the next reply it gives you. We do it too, we just don't think about it. But like, you don't walk up to someone and go, hello, fine, yeah, 3 sandwiches, goodbye. Like, there's a back and forth, and we're maybe a little bit more clever in that if someone goes, oh no, I don't want 3 sandwiches, I only want 1, come on, then you'll remember just 1. You're not going to go back up to the canteen and go, 3 sandwiches, please. Reminds me of the 5 Cougars, thanks. If you're old enough, you'll understand. That's context poisoning right there. But yeah, so your website is not an administrator. Your sources of data are not an administrator. Your sources of data are not to be trusted blindly. All right? Especially if that source of data is a GitHub repo with Markdown. Like, that could potentially have, you know, bad outcomes. So, like, initially all context was trusted, but there is now rules in place to only trust certain websites and the content because I see them as authoritative rather than, yeah, but there's no evaluation. It's quite a simple control. It wouldn't scale well at all for an enterprise environment if you had a manual allow list for trusted websites, all right? But it's a simple agent, so that's how it works here. All right, so you don't actually ever change your agent either. Your agent is the capability, just like, you know, you install a piece of software or you share a file or you put a file on a file system. Like it's a thing, and then you contain it, like you set up the environment so that the environment is safe for the agent, or so the agent doesn't have the ability to become unsafe for your organization. Okay, so that's what you don't have like just instructions for the agent, and to be honest, a lot of the earlier agents were just a series of instructions. But like we're kind of trusting the platform the agent sits on, but my platform is just my work laptop. So probably not the best idea to give it unrestrained access. So you need to manage the environment because the agent doesn't have to change for your outcome to change. The agent will do the exact same thing, but I'm now saying even though you've done a Google search or Bing search or I don't remember what MCP server it uses, it's going to give it like 10 or 100 different websites and that process won't change, but the websites I allow it to reach will change, right? So the agent itself doesn't have to be hard-coded. You just manage your environment. And we do the same thing again with humans. Like if you've got a corporate environment and you've got a firewall, we're protecting you for your own good. We're going to stop you from going to bad sites, all right? So it's the same model. It's just we're making it smaller to fit around the agent. But we also have like other examples of these security controls, just like in your operating system. Like if you're not a local administrator, you can't write to certain folders on your machine, right? And agentic security isn't really that different. So you don't change your agent, you build your agent to be useful. Obviously you don't want it to be intentionally harmful or anything like that, but you manage your environment around it. So try not to give too much authority or ability for the agent to influence outside of it by controlling the environment it sits on. And that way you don't have to worry about like, oh, the new version like GPT-6 is out, or we can finally use Fable again, right? You can put your model in and you don't have to re-architect because you've secured your environment from the agent, okay? So if you don't take anything really away other than agent security isn't really super fancy. It's just solving the environment the agent lives in and constraining what it can access. And if you say, well, the agent is capable in ways that I'm not capable of, but I still have the same agency, how am I constraining a human? Think about it like constrain an agent in a similar way. You'd get a long way. All right, it's probably still not going to fix all of like the things in the top 10, but it would go a long way to it. So, if you don't trust by policy and you design your environment so trust is not required, then you're going to try and make it so that you give the agent the least authority it needs, even though it's got all of the capability in the world. And that way you constrain your agent, all right? So it doesn't always need to have arbitrary tools. Like if it's only doing CFP, maybe you don't want it to be able to execute code. Like, do you really want it to spawn a new shell? Anyway, think about the safest useful path that the agent needs to actually do the thing, and then make that its environment, and give it only enough authority to be able to do the things it needs to do on your system, or whether it's like reaching out into other external systems. I mean, the more I think about it, the more obvious it seems, but I'm lucky that I get to think about it all day, right? And if you're coming here to learn, good on you, because you're putting yourself well ahead of many, many people. But if you don't contain it, and if you don't have any observability, is that me being kicked out? Probably.
Up to. So looking forward to hearing this presentation. If you have any questions, I'm sure put your hand up and he'll gladly ask, but I'm sure he's also got time for questions at the end. Enjoy. I'll get out of the way.
Thanks, Sancho.
Of course.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. It's a little bit overwhelming. I didn't think many people... All right, we're good. Microsoft ClickChamp.
That's not orange.
No, it's decided we've recorded enough now, we're going to replay. Sorry, Michelle. All right, I do need to wrap up. So... Security is not like one control, okay? It's a pattern that you apply. So once you develop your own internal organization standards and security patterns, then you can make that a standard. If any agent's being developed in your environment, you can evaluate it against it. Or if you're doing like a little pokey one like mine, you can apply that standard directly to the agent. It's a pattern of contain, observe, enforce, repeat, over and over, okay? You start with a useful workflow, and it does what you want it to do, then you need to work out and make sure it doesn't do what you don't want it to do, okay? And if you take that away, then it's a pretty straightforward thing, like things like workspace boundaries, audit logs, approval gates, a tool allow list, which I kind of glossed over, sorry, and network policy where it can reach, because like all of us, if we can't get to the internet or can't get to the network and we have to rely on our own brain, we kind of fall short. And then maybe some trust classification to make sure you're trusting the content that's coming back in. Secret scanning, I glossed over that, sorry, but make sure that if it does handle secrets, it doesn't sort of publicize them, anything like that. I think it's all like they're not sexy and exciting. You're not going to see it on Swordfish when they're acting away. Like it's just like these are the things that if you have been in security, information security, you've been thinking about anyway. So it's good that the world hasn't changed that much. So agents can be powerful. We want them to be powerful because they're useful. All right. Just don't trust the environment they're sitting in, and yeah, you can have a trusted system and then an untrusted agent operates safely and securely, all right? So having that secure design is what's going to limit what can go wrong. And yeah, let's have a look at the last slide because it's nice. But yeah, I don't think like I actually learned much about agents from Speaker Ops, to be honest, right? But it really did make me think about how I'd secure an agent and like my next agent much better because, this doesn't really have memory in it. So as far as agents go, it's pretty crap, right? But as soon as you get memory and start pouring a lot more of yourself into the agent, then securing it is so much more important. Like, I don't know, does anyone use like ChatGPT, Copilot, Claude, anything like that? You've been using it for a while now? Go onto Twitter X, whatever, or Threads, if you kind of lean that way, or Blue Sky, or one of them, you see all these influencers saying, oh, these 7 prompts will let you find out the hidden stuff it knows about you. I actually did it, and boy, it knows a lot about me, right? So, like, I've secured it as much as I can. The only way I could secure it further is by deleting my memory. But that memory is so useful. I go, what do I have for lunch today? It gives me a great thing. Right, so without the memory, the agents are not as useful, but because my memory in there is private, like it has to be secure, and you should hold that same standard with every single agent you build, okay? And keep that in your mindset, and I think then you'll be able to build useful and secure agents, and that's what we all want, right? So thank you for showing up.